So I am a big fan of fun, weird, and creative D&D multiclasses. With the proper research, some builds can actually result in powerful and even creative characters, and I want to share some of the ones I have come up with. And to start off, we're going to start by building the perfect Pyromancer. For those of you who are unaware, a Pyromancer is a fire flame mage. I'm talking about making your Chandras, your Zuko's, your Natsus, or literally any other fire wielder you can think of from popular fiction. So for the purposes of this build, our rules will be that any cantrips and spells that cause damage need to be fire damage or have the ability to be fire damage by choice. However, I will say that utility spells and cantrips are still fair game, but they have to make sense for this particular build. For this and future videos, I will actually be using standard array when deciding stats. However, if you decide you want to use the dice method or the point buy method, just adjust accordingly. This is just to show which stats are going to be prioritized over others. So in this case, we're going to put the 15 in Charisma to max out what will be our spellcasting stat. Next, we'll put the 14 in Dexterity and the 13 in Wisdom. You'll see why later. After that, I put the 12 in Constitution, so that way we don't have a negative modifier for it. And afterwards, for the last two stats, it really doesn't matter which one becomes the dump stat. Personally, I'd put 10 in Intelligence and then the 8 in Strength, but that's just me. Moving on to the race for our fire-breathing maniac, there's actually a lot of good options, including Red and Gold Dragonborn, Tiefling, and Fire Genasi. However, if I had to pick a race, I'm actually going to select the Variant Human. Upon doing so, we'll get the ability to add a +1 to our Charisma and a +1 to our Wisdom, making them 16 and 14 respectively. However, the real reason we're selecting Variant Human is the selection of the feat Elemental Adept Fire that we get. This will allow our Pyromaniac to ignore resistances to fire damage, and automatically any dice roll for fire damage becomes a 2 at minimum. This will be important later, just so you know. Next up, backgrounds. I don't know why the player's handbook has backgrounds before or after class. I think it should be before, but for the purposes of these builds, I'll always put the backgrounds between the race and the class. And back on track. For the Pyromancer, I think there are 3 really good options for it. Those 3 options being Entertainer, Folk Hero, and Sage. Entertainer for those fire breathers, fire dancers, and these tend to be the more hot-headed rash characters. But speaking of hot-headed rash characters, Folk Hero also fits, and this is for those people who have legendary or infamous with their various fire powers. And finally, we have Sage for those elder characters who learned to use their flames and temperaments. So personally, I'm going to select Entertainer, but all 3 of these will actually work. Now, after that, we get to choose our classes and spells. First off, our Pyromancer is actually going to be a sorcerer with the Draconic bloodline. The reason why you want to choose this origin is it gives extra resistances to the damage of the chosen type, so pick red, gold, or brass. At level 1 of this subclass, you'll also gain the Draconic Resilience ability. It increases your health each level, and as long as you don't wear armor, the AC is slightly higher, being 13 plus your dex modifier. For the metamagic options you get, I would select the Quickened and Twin spells. Quickened spells for making our fire spells hit faster and more often, and Twin spells for casting those glorious fireballs, so we can double up on the heat of those. And after you select this, you want to take your sorcerer up to at least level 6 to gain the Elemental Affinity ability. This means whenever you cast a spell that does fire damage, including cantrips, you add your Charisma modifier, plus if needed, you gain resistance to fire damage by spending a sorcery point. However, I'd save the sorcery points for your metamagic options. At this point, your sorcerer will know up to 5 cantrips and 7 spells. For the cantrips, you'll select the following from the 3 core books, those being Firebolt, Control Flames, Create Bonfire, Green Flame Blade, and Mage Hand. Since 4 of these do fire damage, the Elemental Affinity and the Elemental Adept abilities will be working overtime and adding some extra damage. Since sorcerers don't prep their spells and rather they know them inherently, they only know 7 by level 6. For the spells known, we're actually going to select Burning Hands, Chromatic Orb, Mage Armor, Agonizer's Scorcher, Scorching Ray, Fireball, and Flame Arrows. Most of these spells are just fire in different shapes, ranges, and effects. However, Chromatic Orb has the option to be fire by choice, so that's why we put this as one of our options, and Mage Armor is if you want to have a little extra bulk. In addition, by 6th level, you'll either get a stat boost or a feat. If you decide to pick a feat, choose Warcaster if you chose to be a human. However, if you chose not to be a human, make sure you get that Elemental Adept ability as fast as possible. If you'd rather do a stat boost, choose Charisma, Dexterity, or Constitution. Charisma will make your damage output higher, Dexterity will give you more AC, and Constitution will increase your health. Since most Pyromancers tend to burn things first and ask questions later, I'm just going to go with Charisma as your best bet. Now here's where things get a little interesting. You could keep going up with the Sorcerer, or you could do what I mentioned earlier, and we're going to make a fun multi-class. I know Warlock is a great secondary class for Sorcerer usually, but not for our Flame Wielder. Nope, our Pyromancer is actually going to be a Monk. Specifically, we will take at least 3 levels of Monk. First of all, being a Monk at the first 2 levels will increase our AC with Unarmored Stance, and combine that with Draconic Resilience. And, in addition to that, our Pyromancer is going to get the ability to move a little faster by becoming a Monk. The most important part at level 3 of a Monk is it gives you the opportunity to choose your subclass. The subclass we're going to be selecting, of course, is the Way of the Four Elements. Haha, just kidding, that is garbage. No, the actual subclass we're going to choose is the Way of the Ascendant Dragon from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. So there are 2 main reasons for selecting this subclass. The first is Draconic Strike, which turns all unarmed strikes into elemental damage type from the list that they give you, which of course includes Fire. This means our Hothead goes full-on Firebender, and all main methods of attack will do fire damage. This means all our unarmed strikes will be ignoring resistance to fire damage and be doing a minimum of 2 damage for their dice roll. The second good thing you're going to get is the Breath of the Dragon, which gives our Living Bonfire a literal breath attack. And since, well, we're going to be selecting fire most of the time, now we can breathe fire. By this point, your Pyromancer is going to be a grand total level of 9, and from there are a few ways you could actually proceed with your level up process. If you decide to gain 3 more levels of Monk, you will gain the extra attack, stunning strike, and temporary dragon wings thanks to our subclass. A 7th level in Monk will give the Pyromancer the ability to dodge AoE effects with evasion. If instead you decide you want more spell options, increase your Sorcerer level and gain access to spells like Wall of Fire, Fire Shield, and Haste for even faster burning of all things. So now we get to the part where I kind of give my own opinions on what I think of these builds. In my opinion, this build is actually very chaotic, but it also sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun to play. It's actually really easy to use if you're a newbie player, and because you're going to have very quick, easy decisions, as well as knowing exactly what you're going to be able to do. In addition to that, since most creatures early on are weak to fire, you'll be doing a lot of damage early on. So again, this is really good for early gameplay. The biggest downside of this particular build is the fact that it is a one-trick pony. It does get past resistance thanks to the Elemental Adept ability, but if something is actually immune to fire damage, your character will have a lot of issues, almost becoming completely useless. In addition to that, this build doesn't have a lot of utility usage like other spellcasters do. However, there is a way around this. If you choose to roleplay that your Pyromancer is learning other magical elements or learning some utility spells, this will add some diversification to give you a little extra edge just in case you run into those pesky fire immunities. Overall, I think this is a very fun and easy build to use and would fit almost any campaign you can think of. If you have some other ways to build the Pyromancer, or if you have some fun character builds yourself, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and have fun delving into those dungeons. I'll see you next time.